Okay. Um, my tripod just gave up the ghost. One of its legs just came off. So I'm gonna turn the camera aspect off. I don't have like a little chibi or anything, like a little photo of me to use for faceless streams. It's gonna be weird not having the camera on. Oh my god. Let me just turn that off, I guess. Or I could keep holding it, because it's weird not seeing me. Alright, hold on, let me move some things. God. Hi, I'm Rachel. Welcome to my book club. Vampires are my special interest book club. That's the name of the book club. And once you're in it, you can never leave. Get it? It's like a vampire consent thing. It doesn't matter. Anyway. So I typically stream on Sundays at 6 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. But I've been doing these midweek streams on and off. I'm not usually doing them back to back like I am this week, but I really want to finish the book that we're reading, which is Castle of Otranto, which has nothing to do with vampires at all, except that it is in the gothic literature genre, and we are pseudo-studying the literature around vampires that don't have to do with vampires to help us better understand the literature with vampires in it. At least that's what we're doing in the midweek. We normally read full vampire stories on Sundays. If that's more your thing, I will see you this week. I had to prep last week. I'm not good at thinking that far ahead. But I do have a book, one from, I think it's 1991. The gore is gory. It is not like the book we were reading before, Dracula's Brood, which was like late 1800s, early 1900s, so very like light on the gore, very like keep it above board. It's creepy, but it's not splatterpunk, whereas this one, I've only read a couple so far. It's just, I have to read ahead just in case there's any sex scenes or things. That one's more graphic, so that's your thing, and you want to hang out and talk about vampires and not this stream, that's chill and cool. I will be back on Sunday. This one is for it's vampire adjacent, and that's why it is not on Sundays. I think I've explained that too thoroughly, to the point of it not being annoying. Okay, I'm gonna put this, I don't even know, it's not a tripod anymore, it's a duopod. I'm gonna put my duopod down and turn off the camera. And it's just going to be us hanging out and reading Castle of Otranto and finishing this chapter 5. It's the last chapter. I got bored in the middle of the introduction. I tend to do that. I don't find the introductions in these types of Penguin classics or what have you to be that interesting if I haven't read the text yet. I prefer to I kind of like read it as I go. But we'll give it a shot on ending tonight with the introduction, probably, or unless it's incredibly boring, which it's going to be. What am I even saying? I don't know. Hi, if anyone's here. Thanks for being here and sticking to the end of the book with me. I have seen the numbers, and I know that currently, as of this live, there's nobody else watching but me, so who cares if the tripod is a duopod. Okay, we're gonna turn it off now. God. All right. Put that down. Okay, just making sure things are good. Okay, yeah. I need to, I can hear myself. The chat is up. All right. Chapter 5. Oh, wait. I forgot my fidget toy. It fell to the bottom of the, it fell to the floor. You didn't need to know that. Okay. Chapter 5. Every reflection which Manfred made on the friar's behavior conspired to persuade him that Jerome was privy to an armoire between Isabella and Theodore. But Jerome's new presumption, so dissonant from his former meekness, suggested still deeper apprehensions. The prince even suspected that the friar depended on some secret support from Frederick, whose arrival, coinciding with the novel appearance of Theodore, seemed to bespeak a correspondence. Still more was he troubled with the resemblance of Theodore to Alfonso's portrait. The latter he knew had unquestionably died without issue. Frederick had consented to bestow Isabella on him. These contradictions agitated his mind with numberless pangs. He saw but two methods of extricating himself from his difficulties. The one was to resign his dominions to the Marquis. Pride, ambition, and his reliance on ancient prophecies, which had pointed out a possibility of his preserving them to his prosperity, combated that thought. The other was to press his marriage with Isabella. After long ruminating on these anxious thoughts, as he marched silently with Hippolyta to the castle, he at last discoursed with that princess on the subject of his disquiet, and used every insinuating and plausible argument to extract her consent to, even her promise of promoting the divorce. Hippolyta needed little persuasions to bend her to his pleasure. She endeavored to win him over to the measure of resigning his dominions, but finding her exhortations fruitless, she assured him that, as far as her conscience would allow, she would raise no opposition to a separation, though without better founded scruples than what he yet alleged, she would not engage to be active in demanding it. This compliance, though inadequate, was sufficient to raise Manfred's hopes. He trusted that his power and wealth would easily advance his suit at the court of Rome, whither he resolved to engage Frederick to take a journey on purpose. That prince had discovered so much passion for Matilda that Manfred hoped to obtain all he wished by holding out or withdrawing his daughter's charms, according as the Marquis should appear more or less disposed to cooperate in his views. Even the absence of Frederick would be a material point gained until he could take further measures for his security. Dismissing Hippolyta to her apartment, he repaired to that of the Marquis, but crossing the great hall through which he was to pass, he met Bianca. The damsel he knew was in the confidence of both the young ladies. It immediately occurred to him to sift her on the subject of Isabella and Theodore. Calling her aside into the recess of the oriel window of the hall, and soothing her with many fair words and promises, he demanded of her whether she knew aught of the state of Isabella's affections. "Ay, my lord. No, my lord. Yes, my lord. Poor lady. She is wonderfully alarmed about her father's wounds, but I tell her he will do well. Don't your highness think so?" "I do not ask you," replied Manfred, "what she thinks about her father, but you are in her secrets. Come, be a good girl and tell me, is there any young man— Ha! You understand me." "Lord bless me! Understand your highness? No, not I. I told her a few vulnerary herbs and repose." "I am not talking," replied the prince impatiently, "about her father. I know he will do well." "Bless me, I rejoice to hear your highness say so, for though I thought it not right to let my young lady despond, methought his greatness had a wan look and a something. I remember when young Ferdinand was wounded by the Venetian— "Thou answerest from the point," interrupted Manfred. "But here, take this jewel. Perhaps that may fix thy attention. Nay, no reverences. My favor shall not stop here. Come, tell me truly, how stands Isabella's heart?" "Well, your highness has such a way," said Bianca, "to be sure. But can your highness keep a secret? If it should ever come out of your lips—" "It shall not, cried Manfred. "Nay, but answer, your highness. By my halidam. What is this word? Halidam? The dictionary doesn't know. Oh, we're downloading a dictionary. All right. It still doesn't know. Halidam. Something held secret. Halidam. Something held secret. By my halidam, if it should ever be known that I said it. Why, truth is truth. I do not think my Lady Isabella ever much affectioned my young lord, your son, that he was such a sweet youth as one should see. I will explain this later. All right. Why, truth is truth. I do not think my Lady Isabella ever much affectioned my young lord, your son, yet he was such a sweet youth as one should see. I am sure, if I had been a princess, but bless me, I must attend my Lady Matilda. She will marvel what is become of me. Stay, cried Manfred. Thou hast not satisfied my question. Hast thou ever carried any message, any letter? I? Good gracious, cried Bianca. I carry a letter? I would not to be a queen. I hope your highness thinks, though I am poor, I am honest. Did your highness never hear what Count Marsigli offered me when he came a-wooing to my Lady Matilda? Marsigli. I have not leisure, said Manfred, to listen to thy tale. I do not question thy honesty, but it is thy duty to conceal nothing from me. How long has Isabella been acquainted with Theodore? Nay, there is nothing can escape your highness, said Bianca. Not that I know anything of the matter. Theodore, to be sure, is a proper young man, and, as my Lady Matilda says, the very image of good Alfonso. Has not your highness remarked it? Yes. No, thou torturest me, said Manfred. Where did they meet? When? Who? My Lady Matilda, said Bianca. No, not Matilda. Isabella. When did Isabella first become acquainted with this Theodore? Virgin Mary, said Bianca. How should I know? Thou dost know, said Manfred, and I must know, I will. Lord, your highness is not jealous of young Theodore, said Bianca. Jealous? No, why should I be jealous? Perhaps I mean to unite them. If I were sure Isabella would have no repugnance. Repugnance? No, I'll warrant her, said Bianca. He is as comely a youth as ever trod on Christian ground. We are all in love with him. There is not a soul in the castle that would be rejoiced to have him for our prince. I mean, when it shall please heaven to call your highness to itself. Indeed, said Manfred. Has it gone so far? Oh, this cursed friar. But I must not lose time. Go, Bianca, attend Isabella. But I charge thee, not a word of what has passed. Find out how she is affected towards Theodore. Bring me good news, and that ring has a companion. Wait at the foot of the winding staircase. I am going to visit the Marquis, and will talk further with thee at my return. Manfred, after some general conversation, desired Frederick to dismiss the two knights, his companions having to talk with him on urgent affairs. I'm gonna pause to drink some water. Manfred, I think I already said that. As soon as they were alone, he began in artful guise to sound the Marquis on the subject of Matilda, and finding him disposed to his wish, he let drop hints on the difficulties that would attend the celebration of their marriage, unless, at that instant, Bianca burst into the room with a wildness in her look and gestures that spoke the utmost terror. "Oh, my lord, cried she. "We are all undone. It has come again. It has come again." "What has come again?" cried Manfred, amazed. Oh, the hand! The giant! The hand! Support me! I am terrified out of my senses, cried Bianca. I will not sleep in the castle tonight. Where shall I go? My things may come after me tomorrow. Would I had been content to wed Francesco. This comes of ambition. What has terrified thee thus, young woman, said the Marquis. Thou art safe here. Be not alarmed. Oh, your greatness is wonderfully good, said Bianca, but I dare not. No, pray let me go. I had rather leave everything behind me than stay another hour under this roof. Go to. Thou hast lost thy senses, said Manfred. Interrupt us not. We were communing on important matters. My lord, this wench is subject to fits. Come with me, Bianca. No, oh, the saints. No, said Bianca. For certain it comes to warn your highness. Why should it appear to me else? I say my prayers, morning and evening. Oh, if your highness had believed Diego, 'tis the same hand that he saw the foot to in the gallery chamber. Father Jerome has often told us the prophecy would be out one of these days. Bianca, said he, mark my words. Thou ravest, said Manfred, in a rage. Be gone, and keep these fooleries to frighten thy companions. What? My lord, cried Bianca, do you think I have seen nothing? Go to the foot of the great stairs yourself. As I live, I saw it. Sorry, getting distracted by the noise behind me. I think it was a truck. Saw what? Tell us, fair maid, what thou hast seen, said Frederick. Can your highness listen, said Manfred, to the delirium of a silly wench who has heard stories of apparitions until she believes them? This is more than fancy, said the Marquis. Her terror is too natural and too strongly impressed to be the work of imagination. Tell us, fair maiden, what is it has moved thee thus? Yes, my lord, thank your greatness, said Bianca. I believe I took very pale. I shall be better when I have recovered myself. I was going to my Lady Isabella's chamber by his highness's order. We do not want the circumstances, interrupted Manfred, since his highness will have it so. Proceed, but be brief. Lord, your highness thwarts me so, replied Bianca. I fear my hair. I am sure I never in my life. Well, as I was telling your greatness, I was going by his highness's order to my Lady Isabella's chamber. She lies in the watchet-colored chamber on the right hand, one pair of stairs. So when I came to the great stairs, I was looking on his highness's present here. Grant me patience, said Manfred. Will this wench never come to the point? What imports it to the Marquis that I gave thee a bauble for thy faithful attendance on my daughter? We want to know what thou sawest. I was going to tell your highness, said Bianca, if you would permit me. So as I was rubbing the ring, I am sure I had not gone up 3 steps, but I heard the rattling of armor. For all the world, such a clatter as Diego says he heard when the giant turned him about in the gallery chamber. What giant is this, my lord? Said the Marquis. Is your castle haunted by giants and goblins? Lord, what has not your greatness heard the story of the giant in the gallery chamber? Cried Bianca. I marvel his highness has not told you. Mayhap you do not know there is a prophecy. This trifling is intolerable, interrupted Manfred. Let us dismiss this silly wench. My lord, we have more important affairs to discuss. By your favor, said Frederick, these are no trifles. The enormous saber I was directed to in the wood, yon cask, its fellow. Are these visions of this poor maiden's brain? So, Jacques thinks, may it please your greatness, said Bianca. He says this moon will not be out without our seeing some strange revolution. For my part, I should not be surprised if it was to happen tomorrow. For, as I was saying, when I heard the clattering of armor, I was all in a cold sweat. I looked up, and, if your greatness will believe me, I saw upon the uppermost banister of the great stairs a hand in armor as big as big. As big as big. Okay. I thought I should have swooned. I never stopped until I came hither. Would I were well out of this castle. My lady Matilda told me but yester morning that her highness Hippolyta knows something. Thou art an insolent, cried Manfred. Lord Marquis, it much misgives me that this scene is concerted to affront me. Are my own domestics suborned to spread tales injurious to my honor? Pursue your claim by manly daring, or let us bury our feuds, as was proposed by the intermarriage of our children. But trust me, it ill becomes a prince of your bearing to practice on mercenary wenches. I scorn your imputation, said Frederick. Until this hour I never set eyes on this damsel. I have given her no jewel. My lord, your conscience, your guilt accuses you, and would throw the suspicion on me. But keep your daughter, and think no more of Isabella. The judgments already fallen on your house forbid me matching into it. Manfred, alarmed at the resolute tone in which Frederick delivered these words, endeavored to pacify him. Dismissing Bianca, he made such submissions to the Marquis, and threw in such artful encomiums on Matilda. What does encomiums mean? A speech or piece of writing that praises someone or something highly. Surround and have or hold within. No, it's encompass. I don't. Okay. A speech or piece of writing that praises someone or something highly. Okay. Dismissing Bianca, he made such submissions to the Marquis and threw in such artful encomiums on Matilda, that Frederick was once more staggered. However, as his passion was of so recent a date, it could not at once surmount the scruples he had conceived. He had gathered enough from Bianca's discourse to persuade him that heaven declared itself against Manfred. The proposed marriages to remove his claim to a distance, and the Principality of Otranto was a stronger temptation than the contingent reversion of it with Matilda. Still, he would not absolutely recede from his engagements, but proposing to gain time, he demanded of Manfred if it was true, in fact, that Hippolyta consented to the divorce. The prince, transported to find no other obstacle, and, depending on his influence over his wife, assured the Marquis it was so, and that he might satisfy himself of the truth from her own mouth. As they were discoursing, okay, let me pause the drink. As they were thus discoursing, word was brought that the banquet was prepared. Manfred conducted Frederick to the great hall, where they were received by Hippolyta and the young princesses. Manfred placed the Marquis next to Matilda and seated himself between his wife and Isabella. Hippolyta comported herself with an easy gravity, but the young ladies were silent and melancholy. Manfred, who was determined to pursue his point with the Marquis in the remainder of the evening, pushed on the feast until it waxed late, affecting unrestrained gaiety, and plying Frederick with repeated goblets of wine. The latter, more upon his guard than Manfred wished, declined his frequent challenges, on pretense of his late loss of blood, while the prince, to raise his own disordered spirits, and to counterfeit unconcern, indulged himself in plentiful draughts, though not to the intoxication of his senses. The evening being far advanced, the banquet concluded. Manfred would have withdrawn with Frederick, but the latter, pleading weakness and want of repose, retired to his chamber, gallantly telling the prince that his daughter should amuse his highness until himself could attend him. Manfred accepted the party, and to no small grief of Isabella, accompanied her to her apartment. Matilda waited on her mother to enjoy the freshness of the evening on the ramparts of the castle. Soon as the company were dispersed their several ways, Frederick, quitting his chamber, inquired if Hippolyta were alone, and was told by one of her attendants, who had not noticed her going forth, that at that hour she generally withdrew to her oratory, where he probably would find her. The Marquis, during the repast, had beheld Matilda with increase of passion. He now wished to find Hippolyta in the disposition her lord had promised. The portents that had alarmed him were forgotten in his desires. Stealing softly and unobserved to the apartment of Hippolyta, he entered it with a resolution to encourage her acquiescence to the divorce, having perceived that Manfred was resolved to make the possession of Isabella an unalterable condition before he would grant Matilda to his wishes. The Marquis was not surprised at the silence that reigned in the princess's apartment. Concluding her, as he had been advertised, in her oratory, he passed on. The door was ajar, the evening gloomy and overcast. Pushing open the door gently, he saw a person kneeling before the altar. As he approached nearer, it seemed not a woman, but one in a long woolen weed, whose back was towards him. The person seemed absorbed in prayer. The Marquis was about to return when the figure, rising, stood I did one of those things where I looked away and lost my spot. I mean, it's so hard to just... I need a better fidget toy. Anyway, the Marquis was about to return when the figure, rising, stood some moments fixed in meditation without regarding him. The Marquis, expecting the holy person to come forth, and meaning to excuse his uncivil interruption, said, "Reverend Father, I sought the Lady Hippolyta." "Hippolyta!" cried a hollow voice. "Camest thou to this castle to seek Hippolyta?" And then the figure, turning slowly round, discovered to Frederick the fleshless jaws and empty sockets of a skeleton, wrapped in a hermit's cowl. "Angels of grace, protect me!" cried Frederick, recoiling. "Deserve their protection," said the spectre. Frederick, falling on his knees, adjured the phantom to take pity on him. "Dost thou not remember me?" said the apparition. "Remember the wood of Joppa?" "Art thou that holy hermit?" cried Frederick, trembling. "Can I do aught for thy eternal peace?" Wast thou delivered from bondage?" said the spectre, to pursue carnal delights. "Hast thou forgotten the buried saber, and the behest of heaven engraven on it?" I have not, said Frederick. "But say, blessed spirit, what is thy errand to me? What remains to be done?" "To forget Matilda," said the apparition, and vanished. Frederick's blood froze in his veins. For some minutes he remained motionless. Then falling prostrate on his face before the altar, he besought the intercession of every saint for pardon. A flood of tears succeeded to this transport, and the image of the beauteous Matilda rushing in spite of him on his thoughts, he lay on the ground in a conflict of penitence and passion. Ere he could recover from this agony of his spirits, the Princess Hippolyta, with a taper in her hand, entered the oratory alone. Seeing a man without motion on the floor, she gave a shriek, concluding him dead. Her fright brought Frederick to himself. Rising suddenly, his face bedewed with tears, he would have rushed from her presence, but Hippolyta, stopping him, conjured him in the most plaintive accents to explain the cause of his disorder, and by what strange chance she had found him there in that posture. "Ah, virtuous princess," said the Marquis, penetrated with grief, and stopped. "For the love of heaven, my lord," said Hippolyta, "disclose the cause of this transport. What mean these doleful sounds, this alarming exclamation on my name? What woes has heaven still in store for the wretched Hippolyta? Yet silent. By every pitying angel I adjure thee, noble prince," continued she, falling at his feet, "to disclose the purport of what lies at thy feet. I see thee feelest for me, thou feelest the sharp pangs that thou inflictest. Speak, for pity. Does aught thou knowest concern my child?" "I cannot speak," cried Frederick, bursting from her. "Oh, Matilda!" Quitting the princess thus abruptly, he hastened to his own apartment. At the door of it he was accosted by Manfred, who, flushed by wine and love, had come to seek him, and to propose to waste some hours of the night in music and revelling. Frederick, offended at an invitation so dissonant from the mood of his soul, pushed him rudely aside, and entering his chamber, flung the door intemperately against Manfred, and bolted it inwards. The haughty prince, enraged at this unaccountable behavior, withdrew in a frame of mind capable of the most fatal excesses. As he crossed the court, he was met by the domestic, whom he had planted at the convent as a spy on Jerome and Theodore. This man, almost breathless with the haste he had made, informed his lord that Theodore and some lady from the castle were, at that instant, in private conference at the tomb of Alfonso in St. Nicholas's church. He had dogged Theodore thither, but the gloominess of the night had prevented his discovering who the woman was. Manfred, whose spirits were inflamed, and whom Isabella had driven from her on his urging his passion with too little reserve, did not doubt but the inquietude she had expressed had been occasioned by her impatience to meet Theodore. Provoked by this conjecture, and enraged at her father, he hastened secretly to the great church. Gliding softly between the aisles, and guided by an imperfect gleam of moonshine that shone faintly through the illuminated windows, he stole towards the tomb of Alfonso, to which he was directed by indistinct whispers of the persons he sought. The first sounds he could distinguish were, "Does it, alas, depend on me? Manfred will never permit our union." "No, this shall prevent it," cried the tyrant, drawing his dagger and plunging it over her shoulder into the bosom of the person that spoke. "Ah, me, I am slain," cried Matilda, sinking. "Good heavens, receive my soul." "Savage, inhuman monster, what hast thou done?" cried Theodore, rushing on him and wrenching his dagger from him. "Stop, stop thy impious hand," cried Matilda. "It is my father." Ooh, okay. Good time to pause to drink some water. Sorry if I'm trying not to drink into the mic, but it's a habit to build. Okay. Manfred, waking as from a trance, beat his breast, twisted his hands in his locks, and endeavored to recover his dagger from Theodore to dispatch himself. Theodore, scarce less distracted and only mastering the transports of his grief to assist Matilda, had now by his cries drawn some of the monks to his aid. While part of them endeavored, in concert with the afflicted Theodore, to stop the blood of the dying princess, the rest prevented Manfred from laying violent hands on himself. Matilda, resigning herself patiently to her fate, acknowledged with looks of grateful love the zeal of Theodore. Yet oft as her faintness would permit her speech its way, she begged the assistants to comfort her father. Jerome, by this time, had learnt the fatal news and reached the church. His looks seemed to reproach Theodore, but turning to Manfred, he said, "Now, tyrant, behold the completion of woe fulfilled on thy impious and devoted head. The blood of Alfonso cried to heaven for vengeance, and heaven has permitted its altar to be polluted by assassination, that thou mightest shed thy own blood at the foot of that prince's sepulchre. Cruel man, cried Matilda, to aggravate the woes of a parent. May heaven bless my father and forgive him as I do. My lord, my gracious sire, dost thou forgive thy child? Indeed, I came not hither to meet Theodore. I found him praying at this tomb, whither my mother sent me to intercede for thee, for her. Dearest father, bless your child, and say you forgive her. Forgive thee, murderous monster, cried Manfred. Can assassins forgive? I took thee for Isabella, but heaven directed my bloody hand to the heart of my child. Oh, Matilda, I cannot utter it. Canst thou forgive the blindness of my rage? I can, I do, and may heaven confirm it, said Matilda. But while I have life to ask it, oh, my mother, what will she feel? Will you comfort her, my lord? Will you not put her away? Indeed, she loves you. Oh, I am faint. Bear me to the castle. Can I live to have her close my eyes? Theodore and the monks besought her earnestly to suffer her to be borne into the convent, but her instances were so pressing to be carried to the castle that, placing her on a litter, they conveyed her thither as she requested. Theodore, supporting her head with his arm and hanging over her in an agony of despairing love, still endeavored to inspire her with hopes of life. Jerome, on the other side, comforted her with discourses of heaven, and holding a crucifix before her, which she bathed with innocent tears, prepared her for her passage to immortality. Manfred, plunged in the deepest affliction, followed the litter in despair. Ere they reached the castle, Hippolyta, informed of the dreadful catastrophe, had flown to meet her murdered child. But when she saw the afflicted procession, the mightiness of her grief deprived her of her senses, and she fell lifeless to the earth in a swoon. Isabella and Frederick, who attended her, were overwhelmed in almost equal sorrow. Matilda alone seemed insensible to her own situation. Every thought was lost in tenderness for her mother. Ordering the litter to stop, as soon as Hippolyta was brought to herself, she asked for her father. He approached, unable to speak. Matilda, seizing his hand and her mother's, locked them in her own, and then clasped them to her heart. Manfred could not support this act of pathetic piety. He dashed himself on the ground and cursed the day he was born. Isabella, apprehensive that these struggles of passion were more than Matilda could support, took upon herself to order Manfred to be borne to his apartment, while she caused Matilda to be conveyed to the nearest chamber. Hippolyta, scarce more alive than her daughter, was regardless of everything but her. But when the tender Isabella's care would have likewise removed her, while the surgeons examined Matilda's wound, she cried, "Remove me! Never, never! I live but in her, and will expire with her." Matilda raised her eyes at her mother's voice, but closed them again without speaking. Her sinking pulse and the damp coldness of her hand soon dispelled all hopes of recovery. Theodore followed the surgeons into the outer chamber and heard them pronounce the fatal sentence with a transport equal to frenzy. "Since she cannot live, mine," cried he, at least she shall be mine in death. Father, Jerome, will you not join our hands?" cried he to the friar, who, with the Marquis, had accompanied the surgeons. "What means thy distracted rashness?" said Jerome. "Is this an hour for marriage?" It is, cried Theodore. "Alas, there is no other." "Young man, thou art too unadvised," said Frederick. "Dost thou think we are to listen to thy fond transports in this hour of fate? What pretensions hast thou to the princess?" "Those of a prince," said Theodore, "of the sovereign of Otranto. This reverend man, my father, has informed me who I am." "Thou ravest," said the Marquis. "There is no prince of Otranto but myself. Now Manfred, by murder, by sacrilegious murder, has forfeited all pretensions." "My lord," said Jerome, assuming an air of command, "he tells you true. It was not my purpose the secret should have been divulged so soon, but fate presses onward to its work. What his hot-headed passions has revealed, my tongue confirms. Know, Prince, that when Alfonso set sail for the Holy Land— "Is this a season for explanations?" cried Theodore. "Father, come and unite me to the princess. She shall be mine. In every other thing I will dutifully obey you, my life. My adored Matilda," continued Theodore, rushing back into the inner chamber, "will you not be mine? Will you not bless your—" Isabella made signs to him to be silent, apprehending the princess was near her end. "What, is she dead?" cried Theodore. "Is it possible?" The violence of his exclamations brought Matilda to herself. I'm being distracted by the noise in the hallway. Shh. Go into your apartments. There we go. Okay. Isabella made signs to him to be silent, apprehending the princess was near her end. What? Is she dead? Cried Theodore. Is it possible? The violence of his exclamations brought Matilda to herself. Lifting up her eyes, she looked round for her mother. Life of my soul, I am here, cried Hippolyta. Think not I will quit thee. Oh, you are too good, said Matilda. But weep not for me, my mother. I am going where sorrow never dwells. Isabella, thou hast loved me. Wouldst thou not supply my fondness to this dear, dear woman? Indeed, I am faint. Oh, my child, said Hippolyta in a flood of tears. Can I not withhold thee a moment? It will not be, said Matilda. Commend me to heaven. Where is my father? Forgive him, dearest mother. Forgive him in my death. No, forgive him my death. It was an error. Oh, I had forgotten. Dearest mother, I vowed never to see Theodore more. Perhaps that has drawn down this calamity. But it was not intentional. Can you pardon me? Oh, wound not my agonizing soul, said Hippolyta. Thou never couldst offend me. Alas, she faints. Help, help. I would say something more, said Matilda, struggling. But it cannot be. Isabella, Theodore, for my sake. Oh, she expired. Isabella and her woman tore Hippolyta from the corse. But Theodore threatened destruction to all who attempted to remove him from it. He printed 1,000 kisses on her clay-cold hands, and uttered every expression that despairing love could dictate. Isabella, in the meantime, was accompanying the afflicted Hippolyta to her apartment, but in the middle of the court they were met by Manfred, who, distracted with his own thoughts and anxious once more to behold his daughter, was advancing to the chamber where she lay. As the moon was now at its height, he read in the countenances of this unhappy company the event he dreaded. What? Is she dead? Cried he in wild confusion. A clap of thunder at that instant shook the castle to its foundations. The earth rocked, and the clank of more than mortal armor was heard behind. Frederick and Jerome thought the last day was at hand. The latter, forcing Theodore along with them, rushed into the court. The moment Theodore appeared, the walls of the castle behind Manfred were thrown down with a mighty force, and the form of Alfonso, diluted to an immense magnitude, appeared in the center of the ruins. Behold in Theodore the true heir of Alfonso, said the vision. And having pronounced those words, accompanied by a clap of thunder, it ascended solemnly towards heaven, where the clouds parting asunder, the form of Saint Nicholas was seen, and receiving Alfonso's shade, they were soon wrapped from mortal eyes in a blaze of glory. The beholders fell prostrate on their faces, acknowledging the divine will. The first that broke silence was Hippolyta. My lord, said she to the desponding Manfred, behold the vanity of human greatness. Conrad is gone, Matilda is no more. In Theodore we view the true Prince of Otranto, but what miracle he is, so I know not. Suffice it to us, our doom is pronounced. Shall we not? Can we but dedicate the few deplorable hours we have to live in deprecating the further wrath of heaven? Heaven ejects us. Whither we fly, but to yon holy cells that yet offer us a retreat. Pause in the drama to drink some water. It's getting good. There's true drama. Thou guiltless but unhappy woman, unhappy by my crimes, replied Manfred. My heart at last is open to thy devout admonitions. I know the word. I don't know why I don't know how to say it for some reason. Admonitions is probably the right one. Yeah. Oh, could, but it cannot be. Ye are lost in wonder. Let me at last do justice on myself. To heap shame on my own head is all the satisfaction I have left to offer to offended heaven. My story has drawn down these judgments. Let my confession atone. But, what can atone for usurpation and a murdered child? A child murdered in a consecrated place? List, sirs, and may this bloody record be a warning to future tyrants. Alfonso, ye all know, died in the Holy Land. Ye would interrupt me. Ye would say he came not fairly to his end. It is most true. Why else this bitter cup, which Manfred must drink to the dregs? Ricardo, my grandfather, was his chamberlain. I would draw a veil over my ancestors' crimes, but it is in vain. Alfonso died by poison. A fictitious will declared Ricardo his heir. His crimes pursued him, yet he lost no Conrad, no Matilda. I pay the price of usurpation for all. A storm overtook him. Haunted by his guilt, he vowed to St. Nicholas to found a church and 2 convents if he lived to reach Otranto. The sacrifice was accepted. The saint appeared to him in a dream and promised that Ricardo's posterity should reign in Otranto until the rightful owner should be grown too large to inhabit the castle, and as long as issue male from Ricardo's loins should remain to enjoy it. Alas, alas, nor male nor female, except myself, remains of all his wretched race. I have done. The woes of these 3 days speak the rest. How this young man can be Alfonso's heir, I know not. Yet I do not doubt it. His are these dominions. I resign them. Yet I knew not Alfonso had an heir. I question not the will of heaven. Poverty and prayer must fill up the woeful space until Manfred shall be summoned to Ricardo. What remains is my part to declare, said Jerome. When Alfonso set sail for the Holy Land, he was driven by a storm to the coast of Sicily. The other vessel, which bore Ricardo and his train, as your lordship must have heard, was separated from him. It is most true, said Manfred, and the title you give me is more than an outcast can claim. Well, be it so. Proceed. Jerome blushed and continued. For 3 months, Lord Alfonso was windbound in Sicily. There he became enamored of a fair virgin named Victoria. He was too pious to tempt her to forbidden pleasures. They were married. Yet deeming this amour incongruous with the holy vow of arms by which he was bound, he determined to conceal their nuptials until his return from the crusade, when he proposed to seek and acknowledge her for his lawful wife. He left her pregnant. During his absence, she was delivered of a daughter, but scarce had she felt a mother's pangs ere she heard the fatal rumor of her lord's death and the succession of Ricardo. What could a friendless, helpless woman do? Would her testimony avail? Yet, my lord, I have an authentic writing. It needs not, said Manfred. The horrors of these days, the vision we have but now seen, all corroborate thy evidence beyond 1,000 parchments. Matilda's death and my expulsion. Be composed, my lord, said Hippolyta. This holy man did not mean to recall your griefs. Jerome proceeded. I shall not dwell on what is needless. The daughter of which Victoria was delivered was at her maturity bestowed in marriage on me. Victoria died, and the secret remained locked in my breast. Theodore's narrative has told the rest. The friar ceased. The disconsolate company retired to the remaining part of the castle. In the morning, Manfred signed his abdication of the principality with the approbation of Hippolyta, and each took on them the habit of religion in the neighboring convents. Frederick offered his daughter to the new prince, which Hippolyta's tenderness for Isabella concurred to promote. But Theodore's grief was too fresh to admit the thought of another love, and it was not until after frequent discourses with Isabella of his dear Matilda that he was persuaded he could know no happiness but in the society of one with whom he could forever indulge the melancholy that had taken possession of his soul. It's at the end of the book. That is the end of the book. End of the Project Gutenberg ebook, The Castle of Otranto. Okay, cool. Wrapped up very quickly, but hey, man, I guess the story was this shitty king is dethroned. Good for them. Good for her. Good for him. Good for them, sort of. Matilda did die. What else in here is worthy of reading? This seems like, okay. Let's go to preface to the first edition. I don't remember if we read this. Probably. Preface is more important than the introduction. The preface is usually part of the story. I don't remember. Okay, well, introduction. Horace Walpole was the youngest son of Sir Robert Walpole, the great statesman who died Earl of Orford. He was born in 1717, the year in which his father resigned office, remaining in opposition for almost 3 years before his return to a long tenure of power. Horace Walpole was educated at Eton, where he formed a school friendship with Thomas Gray, who was but a few months older. In 1739, Gray was traveling companion with Walpole in France and Italy until they differed and parted, but the friendship was afterwards renewed and remained firm to the end. Horace Walpole went from Eton to King's College, Cambridge, and entered Parliament in 1741, the year before his father's final resignation and acceptance of an earldom. His way of life was made easy to him. As Usher of the Exchequer, Comptroller of the Pipe, and Clerk of the Estrates in the Exchequer, he received nearly 2,000 a year for doing nothing, lived with his father, and amused himself. Horace Walpole idled and amused himself with the small life of the fashionable world to which he was proud of belonging, though he had a quick eye for its vanities. He had social wit and liked to put it to small uses, but he was not an empty idler, and there were seasons when he could become a sharp judge of himself. I am sensible, he wrote to his most intimate friend. I am sensible of having more follies and weaknesses and fewer real good qualities than most men. I sometimes reflect on this, though. I own, too seldom. I always want to begin acting like a man, and a sensible one, which I think I might be if I would. He had deep home affections, and, under many polite affectations, plenty of good sense. Horace Walpole's father died in 1745. The eldest son, who succeeded to the earldom, died in 1751 and left a son, George, who was, for a time, insane and lived into 1791. As George left no child, the title and estates passed to Horace Walpole, then 74 years old, and the only uncle who survived. Horace Walpole thus became Earl of Orford during the last 6 years of his life. As to the title, he said that he felt himself being called names in his old age. He died unmarried in the year 1797 at the age of 80. He had turned his house at Strawberry Hill by the Thames near Twickenham into a Gothic villa, 18th century Gothic, and amused himself by spending freely upon its adornment with such things as were then fashionable as objects of taste. But he delighted also in his flowers and his trellises of roses and the quiet Thames. When confined by gout to his London house in Arlington Street, flowers from Strawberry Hill and a bird were necessary consolations. He set up also at Strawberry Hill a private printing press, at which he printed his friend Gray's poems, also in 1758 his own Catalogue of the Royal and Noble Authors of England, and 5 volumes on Anecdotes of Painting in England between 1762 and 1771. Horace Walpole produced The Castle of Otranto in 1765, at the mature age of 48. It was suggested by a dream from which he said he waked one morning, and of which all I could recover was that I had thought myself in an ancient castle, a very natural dream for a head like mine, filled with Gothic story. and that on the uppermost banister of a great staircase I saw a gigantic hand in armor. In the evening I sat down and began to write, without knowing in the least what I intended to say or relate. So began the tale, which professed to be translated by William Marshall, gentleman, from the Italian of Onofrio Morolto, canon of the Church of St. Nicholas at Otranto. It was written in 2 months. Walpole's friend Gray reported to him that at Cambridge the book made some of them cry a little, and all in general afraid to go to bed at nights. The Castle of Otranto was, in its own way, an early sign of the reaction towards romance in the latter part of the last century. This gives it interest, but it has had many followers, and the hardy modern reader, when he reads Gray's note from Cambridge, needs to be reminded of its date. H.M. I don't know who H.M. is. Oh, editor Henry Morley. I don't know if I even read the preface or if I just got bored in the middle. I don't want to reread it, but I kind of do, but I kind of don't want to reread it on stream. You know what? I'm gonna bet that I was smart enough to read the preface. Okay. So that's that. It was hard for me to remember everything that happened because so much time passed between the chapters when I was reading them. That's my bad. But I do want to do more than just like poke around at old books and things, you know. I was thinking it'd be fun if we because I have a history in fandom of making like mood boards and playlists and things like that. I'm not really a fic writer. I've dabbled a little bit, but it's not really my thing, to be honest. But I like more like making little mood boards from Pinterest images and playlists and things like that. That's a lot more fun. So I was thinking we could do that kind of stuff next time. I also have a collection of questions I just randomly grabbed off of the internet, and I remember where I put it. Hold on. Oh, you wouldn't be able to. I mean, you could see it, but I'm too lazy to put it on screen. Oh, hold on. I can put it on screen. It's not that interesting, but it's something to look at. There you go. I was thinking kind of like a book journaling, you know, people bullet journal books and things. I could do that physically with pen and paper, but I don't really. I mean, I don't know how much money it would take to get one of those tripods that can look down at your hands while you're doing things, and I don't want to end up paying more money for something that's going to become a duopod again. So we're going to settle for probably just doing it on Canva and maybe like the Windows Paint or something, but I want to like analyze it a little, do a little book report-esque, old school kind of like give a character summary, give a chapter summary, random questions. How did the book make you feel? Did it evoke any emotions, make you laugh, cry, or cringe? Any weaknesses in the story? What did you read? What did it mean to you? Just random questions I pulled from like blogs real quick. It's just ideas. And we put it in a cute little scrapbooky Canva page. And do that together and not just read the book, but think about it. Think about it a little. Try your hands at analysis. So I'm just talking about it. But that's not going to be tonight. Probably next time. So next Wednesday, I have a cute little folder of pictures I've been saving to do something with. Not that many though. Maybe like 10. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, like 12. Hold on, can you see it? Yeah. Just some photos and things. It could be fun to get a little artsy with it. Is there anything else I want to say or do tonight? Not really. I guess we could start. I don't know. I had fun finishing the book. Now I'm like, yeah, but what else can I do? Probably not. But there is one idea I had while we were reading was like keeping track, just going back through, rereading it so I can answer these questions properly, and keeping track of like words I didn't know that I needed to look up the definitions of, and we could have like a page of words we've learned together on stream or something. I don't know. We'll figure it out. I think it'll be fun. And yeah. Okay. I've got nothing else. Thank you for being here, especially if you made it to the end of this book with me. So far, no one has, and I'm going to be so happy if somebody ever does. If not, hey man, whatever. I made a bunch of messes today anyway, so this is our practice round. Maybe. I don't know. I don't know what I'm saying. Anyway, thank you for being here. I really do appreciate it. I'll see you on Sunday, and then I'll see you again on Wednesday. And we'll hang out and talk about vampires, and then talk about the people who contributed to the vampire explosion of popularity. It'll be fun. That's my thing. That's what makes it a special interest for me. Okay. I'm gonna go now. Bye. It's so weird if you can't see me waving. Okay. Bye.